You really think passing one test makes you something? My father said it with the kind of calm that made it worse. Not shouted, not even sharp. Just flat and certain, like he was correcting a child who had embarrassed herself in public. I was sitting across from him at the restaurant table. My nursing pin was still on my lapel. The bouquet my coworkers had chipped in for was in the empty chair beside me. And the word I had been waiting years to finally say out loud, licensed, was still warm somewhere in my chest when he took it apart with one sentence. Before I tell you what happened next, leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from today. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you're new to this channel, hit subscribe, because what my father said that evening at that table turned out to be the least of what I was about to uncover. A secret had been buried for 11 years, and it was about to change everything I thought I knew about my own life. My name is Cassidy. I'm 31 years old. I passed my nursing boards on my second attempt after working as a CNA for 3 years to pay my way through school. Some people make that sound simple when they say it that way. It was not simple. There were semesters when I was running on 4 hours of sleep and whatever I could find in the hospital break room. There were months when I chose between a textbook and a full tank of gas. I ate a lot of peanut butter toast. I rescheduled rent conversations more than once. I did what I had to do, because becoming a registered nurse had been the one goal I had carried since I was 11 years old, sitting in a hospital waiting room the week my mother died. Her name was Loretta. She died from complications following emergency surgery, internal bleeding the doctors couldn't get ahead of. She was 34, I was 11. My half-brother Bryce wasn't born yet. My father Warren had not yet met the woman who would become my stepmother. What I remember most about my mother is the smell of the lotion she used, something with shea butter and a little vanilla. I remember the way she hummed while she was cooking. Not any particular song, just sound, like she was keeping herself company. I remember that she read every single one of my school papers, even the bad ones, and marked the things she loved in the margins with a small star. I still have 3 of those papers in a box at the bottom of my closet. I can't bring myself to throw them out. After she died, my father raised me. That sounds warmer than it was. He kept the lights on and the refrigerator stocked, and he met what he considered his minimum obligations without complaint. But the distance between us had always felt like more than just grief. Whenever I did something worth noticing, honor roll, scholarship applications, my CNA certification, he found a way to make it smaller. The honor roll was fine, but my cousin had done it every semester since 6th grade. The scholarship was good, but it didn't cover everything, did it? The certification was a start, but it wasn't the same as being an actual nurse. I told myself for years that this was how he expressed high standards. That he wanted me to keep reaching. That someday something I did would finally be enough. Passing the NCLEX felt like it might be that thing. My coworkers organized a small dinner at a Thai place we liked. Nothing extravagant, a corner booth, some appetizers, a lot of genuine happiness from people who had watched me study on every break for the better part of a year. They gave me sunflowers because someone remembered I had mentioned once that they were my favorite. My charge nurse hugged me and said she was proud of me, and I had to press my lips together to keep from crying in the parking lot. My father came because I asked him to. I still wanted him there. Even at 31, after everything, some part of me still believed this could be the moment he looked at me with something that resembled pride. He arrived with my stepmother Ingrid and sat down beside my coworkers, and for a while everything was easy. Small talk. Menu decisions. Ingrid asked about the hospital. My coworkers were warm and funny and made the whole table feel light. Then my coworker Priscilla raised her glass and made a small toast. Just a few sentences about how hard I had worked and what it meant to finally have those letters behind my name. Nothing dramatic. She meant every word kindly. And when she finished, my father set down his water glass and said, "You really think passing one test makes you something?" The table went quiet. Not dramatically, the restaurant kept going around us, glasses clinking, other conversations running, but at our table everyone held still. Priscilla looked at her plate. Tyson, a friend from my CNA days who had come to celebrate, slowly put down his fork. I said, "Dad." He shrugged. "I'm just saying, it's a standardized exam. Thousands of people pass it every year. You act like you climbed a mountain." My stepmother Ingrid touched his arm lightly, not to stop him, just a touch that said she'd heard it and wasn't going to intervene. I looked down at the flowers in the chair beside me. I thought about the second attempt testing fee I had paid out of my own pocket. I thought about the 6-week study schedule I had taped to my bathroom mirror. I thought about sitting in my car in the exam parking garage for 20 minutes that morning, telling myself I could do this. I said nothing, because my throat had stopped cooperating. It was my uncle Darnell who spoke, my mother's younger brother, the only person on her side of the family who had stayed close to me after she passed. He had driven 2 hours to make it to that dinner, which I hadn't expected, and which had made me cry a little when I saw him walking toward the table. He was quiet for most of the evening, the way he always was in groups, but when the silence stretched a beat too long, he looked across the table at my father and said, very evenly, "Warren, that's enough." My father didn't respond. He picked up his menu again like the subject was already closed. Darnell looked at me. Something passed across his face that I didn't fully understand right away. It wasn't just sympathy. It was something older. Something weighted, like he had been holding a thought for a long time and was working out whether tonight was the night to put it down. He didn't say anything else at dinner, but when the evening was ending and people were pulling on coats and finding their keys, he caught me by the arm near the door and said quietly, "Call me this week. I have something I need to show you." I looked at him. "Show me what?" He shook his head. "Just call me. Sooner is better." My father passed by us on his way out, gave me a single nod like the evening had been completely ordinary, and walked with Ingrid to their car. I drove home alone, the sunflowers in the passenger seat, turning my uncle's expression over in my mind the whole way back. I called him the next morning. He asked me to come to his house that Friday, Dayton, about 90 minutes from me, and to come alone. He said it gently but clearly, "Alone. Don't mention it to your father." That was the sentence that made my stomach pull tight. I drove out Friday with the windows cracked and the radio off, which is what I do when I need to actually think. I ran through every possibility. Was he sick? Was there something about the family I never told? When I pulled into his driveway, he was already standing at the door. He had made coffee. He sat me down at the kitchen table the way you sit someone down when the conversation requires a surface close by. He didn't say anything at first. He walked to his spare room and came back with a file folder, the kind with a metal clasp at the top, bent soft at the edges like it had been opened and closed many times over many years. He set it on the table between us and put one hand flat on top of it. "Your mother made me promise," he said. I waited. She made me promise to keep this. She said if anything ever happened to her, she needed someone she trusted to hold on to it, in case things didn't go the way they were supposed to. He slid the folder toward me. Inside were photocopies of a life insurance policy. My mother's name was at the top of the first page, clear as anything. Loretta Ann Beaumont, dated 4 months before she died. The face value was $150,000. My name was listed as primary beneficiary, not my father's, mine. I stared at the page for longer than I probably needed to. "This is mine?" My uncle said, "It was supposed to be. There was a provision. Because you were a minor, your father was named as trustee to manage the funds on your behalf until you turned 21. After that, the money was meant to transfer directly to you." I said, "I never received any money." He looked at me. "I know. I worked my way through nursing school. I took out loans. I had semesters where I couldn't replace my clinical shoes when they wore out." He nodded slowly. "I know that too, that's why I kept this." I sat back in the chair. My hands were on the table and I was looking at them, because looking at my uncle's face was too hard right then. $150,000. My mother had left me $150,000, enough to have covered nursing school twice over with money to spare. Enough that I would never have had to choose between a tank of gas and a textbook. I thought about every scholarship application I had filled out on my lunch break. I thought about the semester I took a leave of absence, because I couldn't afford to continue. I thought about the night before my first NCLEX attempt, lying awake, worrying about what another testing fee would cost if I failed. "I trusted him," I said finally. It came out quieter than I meant it to. My uncle covered my hand with his. "Your mother trusted him too. She didn't have a lot of options. She was sick. She needed to believe he would do right by you." I took the folder home. I spread everything on my kitchen table. The policy documents, the beneficiary designation form, a letter my mother had written specifying exactly how the funds should be used. Education, living expenses, her future. She had written those words herself, in her own handwriting, the same careful hand that had put little stars in the margins of my school papers. The next day I called Tyson. He came over that evening, and we sat at my table for 2 hours going through everything. He pulled up relevant statutes on his laptop. He examined the trustee provisions, the timeline, my old financial aid records that I still had because I keep everything filed by year. The trust should have terminated when you turned 21, he said. At that point, the funds were meant to come to you directly. Did you ever receive any communication from an insurance company or financial institution about a trust account in your name? I thought back. I had turned 21 in my second semester of college. I remembered that birthday. My father had sent a card with a $20 bill inside. No, I said. Tyson was quiet a moment. Then either the funds were exhausted before reaching you, redirected, or the trust was never properly administered. I said, what do I do? He said, you need an attorney who handles estates and trusts, and Cassidy, don't call your father yet. If he realizes you have these documents, anything that's still recoverable gets significantly harder to trace. I found an attorney through my uncle. Her name was Miss Farrow, an office near downtown, known for exactly this kind of case. I brought every document. She reviewed them without expression for a long time, making small notations in the margins. Then she looked up at me and said, the trust language your mother used is specific. If your father was trustee and used those funds for purposes unrelated to your education or welfare, that constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty. Depending on the amounts and intent, it can also cross into criminal territory. She said it calmly, the way you might comment on weather, but the words landed heavy. She filed formal requests for the complete account history, every disbursement made during the trust period, documentation of where the funds had gone. I signed the authorization forms and waited. While I waited, I went to my father's house. I told myself I wasn't going to confront him. I just wanted to be in the same room and watch what happened when I said my mother's name. I arrived on a Sunday afternoon. Ingrid was in the kitchen. My half-brother Bryce, 16 now and tall, in a way that always caught me off guard, was in the living room. My father was at the dining table with a newspaper and a cup of coffee. We talked about nothing for a while, the weather, a road project near his neighborhood, my new hospital schedule. Then I said, I was going through some old things and came across some documents about Mom. My father set down his coffee cup with one deliberate click and looked at me. What kind of documents? From when she died, some insurance paperwork. Ingrid had appeared in the kitchen doorway, a dish towel in her hands, not speaking. That was a long time ago, my father said. Did she have a life insurance policy? 2 seconds of silence. I watched my father's face go completely still in the way that faces go still when someone is running through options. Why are you asking about that? Did she? He set the newspaper down. Cassidy, your mother has been gone for 20 years. I don't understand why you'd want to. Because I found documents with my name on them, Dad. Bryce had appeared silently in the hallway. He was watching me. My father stood up. I kept this family together after your mother died. I paid the mortgage. I kept everything running. And this is what you want to talk about. I said, very carefully, I just want to know what happened to the money she left for me. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, you should be grateful for what you have, and walked out of the room. I sat at the table alone. Ingrid came and stood nearby. After a moment she said quietly, I didn't know about any insurance policy. I looked at her. She seemed to mean it. I left without pushing further, but my father had not denied the policy existed. He had only refused to answer. That was what I needed. The records arrived on a Thursday. Miss Farrow called and asked me to come in before she opened them. When I sat down across from her desk, the folder was already there, thick and tabbed with the case number. She slid it toward me. I opened the first page. The trust had been established with the full $150,000. I could see my mother's signature on the original documentation, careful, unhurried, the way I remembered her handwriting being. Then the disbursements started. I turned pages slowly. Mortgage payments spanning 3 years. A home equity line of credit, open Zaka. 2 international trips. I remembered those trips. I had not been on either of them. Private school enrollment spanning 4 years. Bryce's tuition, a vehicle purchase, home renovations, a second vehicle. I turned to the last page, the remaining balance. $11,000 out of $150,000. I did not cry in Miss Farrow's office. I don't know how I managed it. I think I was past the point where crying would have felt like a release. I was somewhere quieter and colder than that. Miss Farrow said, We have strong grounds. Virtually none of these disbursements fall within the permitted uses your mother specified in the trust language. She paused. I want you to think carefully about how you want to proceed. Formally through litigation, or through the family first. I already knew. I called my uncle from the parking lot. He listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you need?" I said, "I need everyone together. I want him to hear this from me, in front of the family." My uncle arranged a dinner at his house. Him, my father, Ingrid, Bryce, and me. He told my father it was a proper belated celebration for my nursing license. My father accepted without suspicion. I spent the 2 days before that dinner very calm in a way that didn't feel like me. I organized every document, printed copies, tabbed the pages by date and category. I had never prepared for anything as carefully as I prepared for that dinner. We sat down at my uncle's table on a Saturday evening. The food was good. The first 20 minutes felt almost normal. My father even said it was nice to all be together like this. When we finished eating, I got up and retrieved the folder from the kitchen counter. I placed it on the table. My father looked at it. "What is that?" "The trust account records," I said. "The one my mother created for me." I opened the folder and began laying the pages out, one at a time, turning each one slowly, so everyone at the table could see the dates and the amounts and the descriptions. The mortgage payments, the vacations, the private school tuition, 4 years of it, Bryce's name in the description field. I heard Bryce make a sound that wasn't quite a word. The vehicles, the renovations, and then the final balance, $11,000. Ingrid stared at it. She said my father's name once, very quietly. He didn't look at her. My father said he had done what he had to do. He said the money had been used for the family, and that included me. I had lived in that house. I had eaten that food. I said the trust specified education, living expenses, and my future, not vacations, not a private school I never attended. He said I was twisting things. I asked him how many overnight CNA shifts I had worked to stay enrolled in nursing school. He didn't answer. My uncle said from across the table, without raising his voice at all, "Warren, there's nothing left to spin." Bryce said, "Dad, that was Cassidy's money?" His voice was young and genuinely shaken. I didn't look at him when he said it because I knew if I did, I would lose the composure I had been holding all evening. My father stood up. He said he hadn't come here to be put on trial. He said I had always been ungrateful. He said things about sacrifice and hard years and everything he had given up. Then he walked out. The door to my uncle's house closed hard. Nobody moved for a moment. Then Bryce looked at me across the table and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know where any of it came from. I swear I didn't." I reached over and squeezed his arm. "I know," I said, "this isn't on you." Ingrid sat with her hands flat on the tablecloth, looking at the space where my father had been sitting. My uncle got up quietly and started clearing the plates. I watched him, this steady, quiet man, who had driven 2 hours to a dinner nobody asked him to come to, who had kept my mother's documents in a bent folder in his spare room for 11 years because she had asked him to. Because she had loved me enough to plan for a future she wasn't sure she'd see. The legal process moved faster than I expected. My father's attorney, after reviewing everything Ms. Farrow put in front of them, recommended settlement over a public trial. The agreement required him to repay a significant recoverable portion, secured against assets he held, along with a formal written acknowledgement of the breach. It wasn't the full amount. It was never going to be the full amount. Too many years had passed and too much had already been spent. But it was documented. It was real. For the first time, the truth existed somewhere outside my own memory. I enrolled in the graduate program I had quietly closed a browser tab on 3 years ago because I couldn't figure out how to afford it. I moved into a new apartment. The first place I've had that felt like mine, rather than somewhere temporary. Bryce texted me about a month later and said he wanted to talk when I was ready. I said okay, we're getting there, carefully, the way you have to approach something when the road between you has a lot of old damage on it. Ingrid filed for divorce 6 weeks after the dinner. I hadn't seen that coming. I don't know what to make of it, and it isn't something I caused or celebrate. There's a framed photograph on my desk now. My mother, standing in a kitchen I don't recognize, laughing at something just outside the frame, completely unguarded. My uncle gave it to me, the day I drove to Dayton. He said he'd been holding on to it until the right time. Beside the photograph is a printout of the first page of the trust document, My mother's signature at the bottom, and below it, in the field marked primary beneficiary, my name. She wrote it there herself. She sat down with an insurance agent when she was sick and afraid and not sure how much time she had, and she put my name in that field. She was trying to reach forward through years she didn't know she'd have. She was trying to say, you are worth providing for, you are worth protecting. Whatever he tells you about what you deserve, that is not the whole story. For a long time, I believed him over her. I believed that working 3 jobs to stay enrolled was just what life required. That people who needed help were people who hadn't worked hard enough. That the distance between where I was and where I wanted to be was a measure of my own limitations. I don't believe any of that anymore. Before you go, one question. If you discovered something like this about a parent, would you confront them in front of the family, handle it quietly through attorneys, or walk away entirely? Subscribe, and tell me in the comments. I read every single one.